I used to live in Kentucky, and it is a great, great state with a lot of great things to rave about. Not the least of those would be Thomas Massie, the congressman from Kentucky. Unlike most people in Congress, he actually has experience with intellectual property rights. He went to MIT. He started a tech company. He created 70 jobs. I think held 29 patents until he sold that company. He now braves the swamp in D.C. trying to defend old-fashioned things like the constitutional rights. Thomas, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Glenn. I'm coming to you from Fort Pelosi here.
All right, I want to just talk about, break it down so people really understand. Intellectual property rights. Why is this so bad? They just want the COVID vaccine to help people.
Well, first of all, this would be a giant sucking sound for all the intellectual property out of the United States. It's not just the vaccine. They want any technology that could be related to curing COVID. Imagine you're sitting on the board of directors at a medical endoscope company or an MRI company or a CAT scan company, wondering if you should use your technology to help save American lives, but realizing that if you do, now it gets branded as COVID intellectual property, and Joe Biden's going to give it to China. So you would be hesitant to even use your products because we see how they define infrastructure now, right? Reparations are infrastructure. Wait until they start defining IP, intellectual property, which by that we mean patents and trademarks and copyrights and trade secrets associated with COVID. They would start circling as much of this as they could.
I've signed every contract I have signed with a company has intellectual property rights attached to it. That the company, if I create something, the company owns it, or even I'm working for the company, they own it. And that's a really important thing, to be able to own the thing that you have worked on. It's a founding principle. And when you said this, go ahead.
Think about what happens when you can't get a deed to a piece of property, okay? If it's a field, it lies fallow. If it's a city, it becomes a slum because nobody's going to improve that property. Nobody will put a building on it, a house on it, or even a garden on it if they know that somebody else can come along and take what you've put there. So it's important that we have intellectual property. You know, Obama said you didn't build that, so you don't own that. But our founding fathers in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8, said that inventors and authors would have exclusive use of their ideas and discoveries for a limited period of time, and that Congress would grant that. They knew if you gave the inventors and the writers, the creators, in your case, of content, the ability to own what they created, then there would be not just an incentive to create more, but an incentive for investors to develop that property.
Correct.
So that everybody could enjoy it.
And what happens when the investors dry up?
Oh, well, China has no problem with us destroying our own intellectual property system. The only thing they might complain about is they'd have less good ideas to steal. But,
right.
You know, like with the mRNA technology, which, by the way, I believe everybody should have their own choice in whether to take this vaccine or not. But the technology that underlies it is American technology that was developed to cure cancer. This was the mRNA was not developed for vaccines. It was, initially used as an idea of curing other diseases. Well, if you give that underlying base technology to China, not only will you disincentivize somebody coming up with a cure or a treatment or a vaccine for the next epidemic, you're going to disincentivize any treatment or discovery of using mRNA for, say, solving cancer. I mean, this is a big deal.
I have to tell you, they're not this stupid. They just can't be this stupid. This is, I think, to bring our medical system down to the level of the rest of the world, to redistribute the wealth. I mean, these big pharmaceutical companies have all this money. Why don't we give it to India? Or why don't we give it to other countries so they can make some money on it? I mean, it just, you couldn't plan to dismantle this country and our systems better than they have.
Even the socialists in Europe are having second thoughts about this all chummy with the IP thing. Because if you remember when COVID hit, There were certain shortages. People were worried where they could even get antibiotics. And we found out a lot of our most basic drugs are manufactured in China. And we can't even make them here anymore. What Joe Biden would do if he gives away the intellectual property for this and then compels the companies not just to give away the patents, but to basically teach people how to reverse engineer their processes and their trade secrets, he's going to cause all of the drug manufacturing what's left. And by the way, the vaccine, whether you like it or not, it's made here in the United States. It's made in Kansas and Michigan. That's all going to go overseas if Joe Biden sends the know-how overseas.
And so will all the ideas from the rest of the world. A lot of these ideas are done here because we have such strong property rights, or at least have. We've got about a minute and a half, and I have so much to talk to you about. Yeah. Let's just go over the CDC and what the CDC has done to property rights. Go ahead.
The eviction moratorium. By the way, they're telling renters, you don't have to pay your rent, but if you're a property owner, try not paying your property taxes this year or last year and see what happens. I mean, they will take your property away and sell it at an auction. So they're telling renters that they don't have to pay rent. When they do that, though, Glenn, as you well know, they're taking property from private property holders. And in a lot of cases, these may be senior citizens who had a big house. They downsized. They bought a condo and they're renting out their big house for their retirement income. They're still expected to pay taxes on that to the government. They're still expected to keep the property up, yet the renters who are renting it don't have to pay them. This is a taking of private property by the federal government, and they're not stupid. They know what they're doing. It's unconstitutional for one thing, because the CDC did it. It wasn't even a law, but it's extra unconstitutional because the Congress didn't even vote on it.
Right, and it's clearly spelled out in the Constitution. This is not one of those things that are like, I don't know. Property rights, especially intellectual rights, are clearly spelled out in the Constitution. Congressman, thank you so much. We'll talk again.
Thanks, Glenn, for having me on.